Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being quiet to receive our next speaker. Let me tell you that I don't know much about what we're going to hear today, so I am very interested in listening because it's artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is transforming our businesses. So Pedro Ruiz is the founder and CEO of Exponential Real Estate. Exponential Real Estate and a deep learning engineer. Pedro is a deep learning engineer, and also this real estate firm is developing the world's smartest real estate platform, leveraging artificial intelligence and XR, AR, and VR, which I don't have any idea what is it, but I know Pedro is going to explain us that. And this is to make the process of buying real estate more engaging, efficient, and human-centered. He brings a unique set of technological, entrepreneurial, and design perspective to the dialogue of innovation and technology. He has also held workshops and spoken at a range of conferences and events about artificial intelligence, exponential technologies, and how we can leverage technology. And Pedro is a Singularity University alumni and ambassador for the Singularity University chapter in Austin, whose mission is to empower our community to drive the development of transformative technologies towards maximizing the human potential. Now, he is also a community of practice fellow for IDEO, where he uses human-centered design to help global companies design better products and services through empathy and experimentation. You know, all this, he's an ambassador, a coach, and I am so excited to hear from this young man who has a lot to teach us. Give a big welcome to Pedro Ruiz.
Hi everyone. So she said my name is Pedro Ruiz, and I hope you all had a good lunch. And I'm really grateful to Gabriel and AEM for the invitation to share with all of you a little bit about technology and artificial intelligence. And I just want to start by having my clicker work. Oh, there we go. And then skip one. I just want to start by reminding all of you that you already have a lot of technology and artificial intelligence in your life that you might not be aware of. But most importantly, this is just going to become more common, more ubiquitous, and it's just going to affect everything. So there's three things that we're going to be covering today. This is not working. There we go. So when you start your day, if you're like me and you like IoT devices, you're gonna have a sleep monitor, your breathing, how long you're sleeping, and everything you're doing throughout your day. Another thing that we have is if anyone here who wears I think we have a second microphone.
My assistant is on. She's the one who turned it off.
We're working on it.
Do you want me to start over? Or? Yeah, so basically, thank you. I'm going to talk about technology. And so we have a lot of technology around us every day, right? And I think one of the greatest things about tech is that everything from how we sleep to what we're doing every day, when we're walking, all the vital signs, and just feeding information, right? And what do we do with it? If we keep looking throughout our day, everything from our homes being aware of what's going on, our breakfast, probably our food is already being influenced in some shape, way, or form from the way that the seeds are designed to how it's harvested. And all of these combined with technologies that we have cars that can drive themselves, and it's just more regulation that's standing in the way. But the technology is already there where they can drive themselves. And what are all these things coming to, right? When you keep going throughout your day, your house is aware whether you're in it or not, and it learns your preferences. Maybe you work at home on Mondays, so it keeps the AC running longer. Or it knows that, every day from like 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. no one's at home, so you don't need the house to be cool enough, but it knows that it needs to start cooling down at 5. And if you keep going throughout your day, your sprinklers can know whether it's going to rain. Your vacuum can just run where you're not at home, so you're not annoyed by the sound, and the house is clean. But also, you have now, your email can understand what you're writing and suggest to you what else you should be doing. And all of this is before you even get to actually doing your job. And that's the surprising part, right? So today I'm going to talk to you about everything that is going to start impacting the way you work and the way that we are all producing value in this world. So tech is pervasive. It's getting everywhere. It's going to get more involved in your everyday lives, your work days, and more importantly, everything from our longevity to what we do for a living. And I'm not here to talk about this super mystical feature that it's out of reach and it's just in our imagination. I'm here to help you understand where the technology is today and what you can actually do with it. And all of these ideas are not new. These are pictures from a 1958 edition of Popular Mechanics. And we already had stuff like video calling and working remotely, and our warehouses being run by robots, and we have self-driving cars, and being able to do we still can't do calls from our watches, but we're probably doing that soon. But the thing is, it's really easy to imagine a future that is better. And once we imagine it, there's a lot of people working on it. I think that's an important part. If you can imagine it, we're going to get there. And the good thing is that just technology is getting faster and faster. Another one, that's a self-driving car. And we have a generation that's growing up with these things, right? The way for us, it's weird to think about robots helping us do things. We have children that are being born right now that probably will never have to learn how to drive. Most of the menial tasks you do at home, like from cleaning your house and stuff, they're just gonna not have to worry about it. It's just gonna get done for them. And I want to invite you to, let's take a step back and start by, I'm gonna share with you 3 frameworks that are gonna help you understand how not only this technology, but any exponential technology, how it's moving and what it's going to be going through. Let's go. So this is Pedro. He is one of the 2 co-founders of Singularity University, and he came up with this framework called the 6 Ds of exponential technologies, right? And what it is any technology that's on an exponential curve will go through these 6 stages. I'm going to focus on the first 3 because these are the ones where AI is mostly in, but just be aware that all of the other ones, there are some technologies that have already gone through it, and others that probably are going to be really quickly going into that. So the first one is digitization. Basically, when you turn something and you imbue it into zeros and ones, basically you codify it. What this does is it allows you to replicate and transmit it with a marginal zero cost. Basically, it's free to move it around and it's free to copy it. What does this do to something? So the easiest example, photography. You used to have 24 shots. You weren't sure if they were going to have a finger, they were going to be blurry, or if you actually got the thing you wanted in the frame. And you had to wait a day or 2 or up to a week sometimes if everyone, like Christmas and Thanksgiving. And nowadays we take pictures of our food. So we don't even think about it. We probably don't even print them. And even if we do, we get to choose the best one. And there's even technology going into how it's focusing. And this is the next phase. This is the most important phase. So this is a picture from the streets of New York in 1904. Can anyone point out the most shocking thing from this or the standout?
No car.
Actually, you're on the right track. There's 2 cars. So if you look at this, this is a picture in 1917. It's all cars. No more horse and buggies, fewer people on the streets because cities transform. But what's impressive about this? I mean, yes, we went from horse and buggy to car. But if you look at how it happened, it's shocking. So from 1904, that was about 20%. We reached parity in 1912. That's the first time that there were more cars than horse and buggies in the road. It took it 8 years. Then in the next 5, completely substituted. And this is happening today, right? We already have Waymo with self-driving cars. And the impressive thing is that it took a long time, but if you look at how Waymo works and how it's training, in November 2017, they had 4 million miles driven. Then when we look at August last year, they already had 8 million. And this last month, they reached 10 million. The reason why the rate at which they were accumulating driven miles is because they actually had permits, and the last 2 million miles were in public roads with actual passengers and no supervision. So the thing is, these cars are learning all the data, right? You as a driver have experience, and you know when someone's going to cut in front of the line or someone's going too slow, you know what to do. But one of the things that computers have and algorithms is that while it did 10 million miles in the real world, they've done 10 billion miles in simulation. So these cars have a collective experience that's greater than what any single human could ever get to. And this is important because of one main reason, right? When you think about that, you can simulate situations such as like hazardous weather. The stereotypical, like, behind every wall there's a kid running after it. You can simulate those cases and what happens, what should I do? And there's a whole body of knowledge that it's ready, it knows what to do. We also have to take into account that we're putting bias into it, such as like, in the event of this, what should you do? And probably humans are not consistent enough for us to even know. We say that we're going to do something, but in the heat of the moment, we don't always do the same thing. So that's one thing we still have to figure out. What are we going to do? Are we going to choose a different operating system that is in accordance with values? Is it going to be the same across the world? We don't know. But the important thing is that technology through simulation can just exceed the capacity of humans for learning. And this is the second part that's important. Rick Kurzweil, he came up with, in his book Singularity is Near, he realized that we were on a really fast curve. It's an exponential curve of the computational power you can get for $1,000. The important thing for you guys to learn about this is that around 2040, we're going to have an iPhone, or basically it's getting more expensive, but $1,000 product is going to have the same computing power as your brain. By 2040 and by 2045, it's going to have the computing power of all of humanity combined. What does this do? It's basically, we have cheaper and faster computing coming over, and all of these technologies that are coming along are going to, what's going to happen to all of these, right? Artificial intelligence is one piece of it, but when you start getting all of these converging, that's when real change happens. And this is the third, and I think the most relevant to your companies right now. This is Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, who wrote a book titled AI Superpowers. If you want to understand what stages AI is going through and what your company can do in each one, that's a really great book. And he puts that all the work we do in this spectrum from optimization to creativity and strategy, within the next 15 years, probably everything that's optimizing routine and repetitive, not likely. It is going to happen, maybe plus minus a few years. Most likely it's going to be faster than that. That doesn't mean fire everyone who's doing those things and just start hiring algorithms, because if you add compassion, there are jobs that require a human touch, right? And what happens with this? And then we get 4 different ways that we're going to work with AI. We're either going to have AI working on stuff that doesn't need human touch, it's highly optimizable, it's probably dangerous or repetitive. You're going to have stuff like nursing and being a doctor, where you can have the AI doing the diagnosis, where the human being is going to share with you and it's going to guide you through that emotional reaction that you have, right? So it's basically bundling care around cold hard truth, which is what they already do. And then you have, on the more interesting side, you have augmented humans, and you have where it's highly strategic, you need compassion. And the last one, this is the most interesting, where you don't really need compassion, but it's highly creative. And you're probably going to have the same performance from the AI doing it on its own than augmented humans. Now we're going to take a deeper dive into this. So the second phase is, what the heck is all this about AI, right? And AI is actually a very old concept. It's about 6 years old. This is Joffrey.
Very old.
Sorry. 16. Sorry if everyone gets offended. It's relative. Joffrey can. So everything from when we had Alan Turing working on the Enigma to the first perceptron. Humans have been obsessed with this idea of how do we get computers to do things the way we do it, right? How do we make them more like us? And Joffrey Hinton is considered the grandfather of what we call today machine learning, and he set the stage for this a long time ago, and up until recently, then you had these techniques to enable computers to do human cognition. Now we have the computing power and also the data to do it. So the first level is AI in general, it's just making computers do stuff more like humans. The second level is machine learning, which is basically we use statistics to allow computers to learn these patterns on their own. We don't have to give them all the details. And the last one is deep learning, which is what I work on primarily, which is you create multi-layers. Basically, it's the way our brain works. When you see something with your eyes, you don't just think cat, ball, water. Your brain goes through a series of layers that just allows you to differentiate things and actually process them. And it's a very hard thing to do, even right now, when you even your brain to grasp more than 5 or 6 categories. It's really hard for a deep neural network. The only challenge we have is that sometimes we cannot explain why it's telling us something, because this kind of cognition is beyond how we perceive it. So it's more about how do we make sure that the data we're putting in it is consistent and is unbiased. And we can still poke holes at it, but we're still struggling with making it more explainable for us lowly humans. And what does this do with everything, right? So we have bucket loads of data, literally all the time. If you think about all the sensors, and this is just gonna get bigger and faster and better. And I sound like Daft Punk already. But if we keep going on this trend, programming right now is pretty much like a recipe. Programmers have to think of all the exceptions and all the cases, and that's a lot of the work. It's what happens if this and this and this, and it's really expensive if you miss one thing, and then users always find a way to do that scenario. You then think about it, and then your phone crashes or your computer crashes. Your phone's operating system has about 12 million lines of code. That's a lot. And probably it still crashes every day, or it gets slow, or it gets buggy, and it's annoying. But the good news is that how do our kids learn? If you think about how humans learn, we learn by trial and error. You don't come and teach your kid, this is the book of life. If you learn all of these things, then you'll know what to do in every situation. Why? Because A, the world is constantly changing, but most importantly, we adapt and change. That's why everyone makes independent decisions. And if following with the same line that we want computers to be more like humans, we want them to learn like us. So what happens when you do that? Then computers can extrapolate patterns from all the data that you have, and they can give explanations, they can give you advice based on that. And what do you need? A lot of data. A lot of data. The more data you feed it, the better quality it is, the better and more reliable that its recommendations are going to be. And what does that leave us? With programmers that can focus on the more creative side of what should we use AI for. More than thinking about all these exception cases, you're having programmers and executives really drill down into what is it that we can use our data for, right? Where should we point this camera at? What should we be looking for? And this is where it gets interesting, because humans are really good at these kind of cross-pollination, or figuring out those weird connections. But if we give it enough connecting points and the data, they'll be able to help us do things faster and easier. And most AI that you hear about is on the first category, narrow AI, which is basically, it's replacing a very specific task within a very limited and specific domain. General AI, there's a few companies working on it, but in general, it's just having knowledge from one domain and being able to implement it in something else. Right now, algorithms, for example, self-driving cars, can drive that model of car, but you give it a helicopter, it can drive it, right? Even though that human, you could say like, oh yeah, basic principles, you're moving here, don't hit stuff. But it's really interesting how the way that they learn right now, and they're very good at adapting. When you move a little bit of things, You can change like the size of the car a little bit, but if you change it fundamentally and it's still commuting, it just breaks down. And super AI, that's your Skynets and HAL 3000s. Don't worry about it, your company's data will probably not do anything towards it, and we shouldn't worry about it for the next like 15, 20 years. And the cool thing about all this is tasks that we think that are very human or that we even suck at, such as like picking berries at the right time, can be done by a combination of robotics, computer vision, and machine learning. And when you look at these things, you also get tasks that are dangerous to humans, and we think that, oh, that can only be done by a human. And you have, this is a robot in Japan. It started being commercially available in November last year. And when you think about drywall, you can think about it works overtime, it just needs to have a battery on it, it needs to have electricity, but it can do all of these dangerous tasks. It looks clumsy right now. You probably would need like a lot of these to actually be able to make up for the productivity. But when you think about not having humans do these kind of tasks is important. And that brings us to the third one. So now that I know what's going on, what technology we have, so what should I do about this? This is, anyone here familiar with the Gartner Hype Cycle? All right, so you can look up, Gartner publishes these every like 3 to 6 months, up to a year. It's just getting like faster, so they're basically making a monthly thing. And the important thing about this, more than reading each of these, is that 85% of these are the trending technologies for this year, where they are right now, and 85% of these are related to artificial intelligence. And most of these are in that phase where we have really inflated expectations. You think that, oh, you hear about this deep fake model, and now we're gonna have like deep fake videos everywhere, we're gonna have like an AI anchor. All of these technologies that are on the research phase, they have really promising results, but we still need them to mature to get to a point where a regular business or everyday situations are gonna be using it. The important one that you need to focus on is they also have the ones for small to mid-sized companies, and you also have a lot of these technologies that are related to AI. Here it drops down to about 70% because you still have some other things that are related to industry or just human relations that don't really apply yet with AI, but they will eventually. So basically, focus on technologies that you can actually get results from, more than investing your time, money, and resources on technologies that are very early and probably your data or the algorithms themselves are not ready for it. And please don't torture your data. If it doesn't yield results yet, you don't have to try to force it. A lot of these algorithms require a lot of data, and that number varies. Everything from a company that can have a million data points, but you don't really have a pattern that's clear, you're going to be wasting your time and money. So if it doesn't work at first, just keep cleaning up your data, keep accumulating it, and see it as the digital gold that it is. And the other thing, you don't have to use AI for everything. This is how Google decides whether or not AI should be involved in something, and it's very simple, right? First of all, what I was talking about, like, is there a pattern, right? Is there people who buy or don't buy something? Is there an easy way to define success? The third one is my favorite one. Can you limit the scope of that need, right? Is it just a general, like, oh, we're solving something for them? Or can you say, like, you can categorize them into different scopes? And the last one is, even if you have all of these, should you go for automation or augmentation? So examples of if it's augmentation or automation. The first one is automation is really good. Google has something called the PAIR guidebook. You can look it up. But these are the 3 main ones that I like to use from there. They have like a list of 12. And it's basically, you should automate things that people don't know how to do, they can't do it, or they're repetitive or dangerous. Examples of these, who here likes burgers in Texas? So this is an example of a company in San Francisco called Creator Burger. And what they did is they made a machine that basically makes the burger for you. Completely autonomously, you can choose the toppings, you can choose how well done you like your meat. And the cool thing about it is that it looks very simple because it is. Right? You think about it, it's a recipe. And the only thing that it has to do is determine, like, is it this temperature or that temperature? And the human is just serving it for you because of, like, we still like human contact and some stuff, but this is an example of separating the things that need to be done by humans and the things that where humans add value. And the next example is, so this was published this week. So Facebook was just at a conference where they were doing something called natural language processing, and all the companies there were working on it, and this is the way that they started doing translation between languages. The cool thing about it is that they surpassed humans in pretty much 18 languages. They were so close, up to 35, but in 18 they were definitive. And the way it's doing it is that it's translating between German and English. It gets different translations, and then it runs them back through, okay, I got this German. If I translate it back to English, what does it tell me? And the cool thing is that you get a probability, and you can actually, sort of how a human would translate, if anyone here has ever hired a translator, there's some words that are very specific, that are not just literal, and especially because you need to understand the context. So think about legal documents or stuff like that, and it's really important that you get the right word. AI is already doing it better. What does this enable us? So there's this company called Soul Machines, and this is an AI-generated, what basically is a feature of chatbots. You can actually interact with these. There are cameras, and they can react to your human emotions, and they emulate them. The thing that I was surprised the most by is Procter & Gamble just hired, we don't have audio, but this is their spokesperson for a new cosmetics brand they're launching in Japan. What's cool about it is you can FaceTime her. And if you're a 13-year-old Japanese girl that needs advice about her skin, she gets the input from your camera, she can react to your emotions, but she can also see the state of your skin. Right? And you can send her pictures of how your skin is doing, and she'll recommend products. Part of the things that they're working on with this is they're testing it in Asia primarily, because people are already used to interacting with technology more, but more importantly, they want a private conversation. They don't necessarily need a human, they just need the best advice they can get. And this is just making it relatable, right? It looks more human, it sounds human, we have audio, but we're just getting better, right? And she can understand when you're talking to her. One more. And the other thing is, if you're a programmer, this is a company called Teleport HQ. They're based in Bulgaria. And if you ever have a designer that you go through, oh, I draw something and I get to my website, they're doing code that this is your laptop, you just face your camera to it, and it's creating production level code. So that means that even things like programming, if you know how to draw it and you can convey the idea that way, you can already get to the point where programming a website or an application is going to be as easy as you just having a conversation with your computer and drawing it. If you keep going, if anyone here plays golf, you can already get autonomous flight, and they still make their burger. They get the order in the restaurant. But the cool thing is, they're doing it in golf courses because no buildings, very few people, and they can fly high enough that unless you have a pro player, you're not going to hit it. But you can, if you think about it, we're just getting these kind of deliveries are just going to become more ubiquitous. And the second category is augmentation. So this is, a human's really good at it, they enjoy it, and they feel responsible. It's really high stakes. So think about like if we screw up, and there's going to be big consequences. And the last one is, there's complicated personal preferences, which is basically code for humans are picky and like we're not logical, so we might say that there's something that we need, and that's not it. And this is the counter side to Creator. It's a company called Visa Robotics, and they make this robot that can learn from a human. And the important thing is they designed their robot with the idea that it's going to work alongside humans. So it's not going to bump into them, it's going to learn from them. It can learn new skills as they go. But if you think about how many new restaurants you can do and how many restaurants you already have, there's a need for both examples, right? And this is, we're understaffed and it's rush hour and we can leave the robot, cook me these 8 burgers while I take care of the customer. That's the kind of things we can do. Go forward. And you also have technologies like TensorFlow. This is an open source project by Google. They already have even pre-trained models, so you don't even need to run it on a server in the cloud, you can just run it on your browser. And the cool thing about this is simple things such as fraud detection or demand prediction, things that are very business heavy and you can get results immediately, they have pre-trained models. And if you don't have enough data yourself, you can still compare, this is my demand, this is the visitors from my website, and what does this tell me? And there's already that, you can still go deeper. And there's tools like Monkey Learn Monkey Learn is basically a codeless interface where you upload your data and you just need to tag it, right? This is good, this is bad, and it'll help you have a pre-trained model that you can do. There's a lot of people that are using this on their chatbots, so they can have a more human response, and it's not like a, sorry, I didn't understand that, can you rephrase that? And you have to look for keywords, that it's just, what we want is for these interfaces to be more and more human. And this is a startup that they raised a Series E round. If you have a lot of data, and you're at the point where my technical team is really busy and I already have a data scientist, but they're mostly spending their time figuring out what to do with the data. This is a really cool startup. What they do is that if you have your data, you can upload it and you can give it a go, and the only thing it can't do is clean up the data, but it can recommend to you, these are the best algorithms to process this data and to get insights. And the cool thing is that they're using open source projects from GitHub, so it runs training on all of the ones that it finds. And it'll actually recommend to you which is the best one for the goal that you have. You can keep running it, and once you have the trained model, you can either A, commercialize it, or just run it for your own data. And thank you. I think we're out of time. But if you like these kind of conversations, you want to meet up with people who are experimenting with these kind of technologies, we try to have events about every 2 to 3 months here in Austin, and you can scan this QR code or just look us up on like Singularity University's website. And yeah, welcome to the fray. I hope it helps. I know it's a very quick fire way, but I try to make it practical. I hope it helps you.
Good job. Thank you so much, Pedro. Thank you so much. I think that all these technologies, some of us really need to take time to, there is a phone here, I think it's yours? Yes. But it's always good to learn about this. What I do for me is to introduce to you the next person, because as many of us, I just would like to know how many of you, before coming to the United States, were Mexican citizens or still Mexican citizens, so we can see how many Mexicans are really here. Yeah, mexicanos todos nosotros, muy bien. So, you know, we gather, we love to be together, and it's always good to have somebody who represents the government. And here in the city of Austin, we are estrenando un nuevo consul. We are really having a new consul, Consul General of Mexico, Pablo Marentes. Pablo Marentes was appointed by the actual President Andrés Manuel López Obrador in 2019 and ratified by the Senate to serve as the Consul General of Mexico in Austin, Texas. The Consul General holds a law degree from the National Autonomous University, la Universidad Autónoma de México, with a master's degree in social science from the Institute of Social Studies, The Hague in the Netherlands. He also has a PhD, is a PhD candidate in history from the Universidad Iberoamericana. He was a professor at the Faculty of Political Science of the Universidad Iberoamericana, of the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de Monterrey, el Instituto Tecnológico Autónomo de México también, and the Carlos Septién García School of Journalism over 35 years. Consul General Pablo Marentes has an extensive experience in media, including collaborator for the journals Excelsior, Novedades, and Siempre, General Director of XEIPN TV Channel 11, Canal 11 of the National Polytechnic Institute, General Director of Mexican Radio and Television Corporation, Channel 13, General Director of the Mexican Television Institute, founder of Red National Channel 7, Director General de Imevisión y colaborador para el Journal de El Universal. Abroad, has held the following positions: Minister in charge of Cultural Affairs at the Mexican Embassy in Washington, Consul General of Mexico in New York, Consul General of Mexico in San Francisco, the largest cities. He is the author of several books and articles regarding the social effects of communication, political parties, and the history of public television in Mexico. And also, he's married with his lovely wife, Patricia Lerdo de Tejada, who is also here joining us. But démosle una gran bienvenida al Cónsul General de México, Pablo Marentes. Bienvenida. Cuando le guste, sí, aquí, ¿te lo puedes poner aquí o aquí, como lo quiera acá? Entonces aquí se lo ponemos. Vamos a ver. Muy bien. Muy bien, Cónsul.
This is a very nice audience, also very challenging. It's a true honor for me to address this gathering, and I sincerely thank Gabriel Diaz, President of the Association of Mexican Entrepreneurs, for the opportunity to share some views in relation to Mexico and the United States, particularly Mexico and Texas, not Texas, Texas. Mexico has 50 consular offices in the United States, 11 alone in Texas. There is no other country in the world with such a number of consulates in another country as Mexico has in the United States. The size of this consular network symbolizes the importance and the scope of our bilateral relations, and of course, the top priority that Texas represents to us. Since the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, that was signed in 1993, the value of our two-way trade has grown sixfold, reaching $616 billion in 2017. NAFTA has been good to its members. It has contributed to the well-being of people in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. The integration of our economies has brought prosperity to each and every one of these wonderful countries that I just mentioned. No other state has benefited from NAFTA as much as Texas. The Lone Star State ranks #1 in trade figures with Mexico, a flow that generates almost $200 billion per year. In terms of exports, Mexico is Texas' biggest market. 37% of Texas exports alone go to Mexico. Mexico imports from Texas 62% of the state's exports worldwide of beef, pork, and poultry. 80% of Texas dairy, bird eggs, and honey exports worldwide go to Mexico. Texas oil, natural gas, computers, electronics, and transportation equipment are exported to Mexico. Nearly 500,000 jobs in Texas directly depend on the trade between the United States and Mexico. What Texas sells to my country is worth 6% of your state gross domestic product, compared to 1.3% nationally. One does not need to be an expert on the state's economy to recognize that the amazing economic success of Texas depends to a great extent on maintaining a strong and fluid economic relationship with Mexico and with its people, all of them good workers. The new trade agreement between Mexico, Canada, and the United States, the USMCA or TORMA, is still pending ratification in Canada and the United States. In Mexico, we have done the homework. We must work hard to make sure that it is ratified soon in this country in order to keep our mutual prosperity going. It is incumbent upon all of us to raise awareness about the comparative advantages of the new agreement, such as rules of origin that incentivize North American production, the transparent, consistent, and predictable customs, regulations to streamline processes and facilitate cross-border trade, the active promotion of digital trade, the preservation of dispute settlement mechanisms, the full protection of intellectual property rights, or the unlimited and duty-free access for North American products, just the same a few of the main features of the new agreement. The Mexican government is fully committed to strengthening the trade partnership that serves as the basis of the North American economic success. As you all know, on December the 1st, 2018, the President Manuel López Obrador assumed the government of Mexico. He won the elections with an overwhelming majority. His victory has been the crowning of Mexican democracy and represents the people's will. Let me assure you that the government of Presidente López Obrador will keep its international commitments. The new administration is very much people-oriented. Social spending to alleviate poverty and improve income and distribution will be at the core of this administration. But at the same time, the new government is committed to maintaining fiscal discipline and not increasing our public debt. The new government understands that Mexico, in the economic plane, its growth depends on private investment, both foreign and domestic. More importantly, President López Obrador has consistently expressed very clear his full support of NAFTA and of the negotiations that created the USMCA. Our trade will remain strong. Foreign investment will be welcome and respected, and the United States and Canada will remain our main trade partners and our friends. Together, we can make North America the most competitive and powerful economy in the world. Mexico is a reliable partner. Our common history has borne witness of that. Despite all the noise and rhetoric, we should keep our ties strong.